Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Joanne Smedley, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Joanne Davey. Today we acknowledge the 25th anniversary of the 1996 Black Hawk tragedy. On 12th June 1996, soldiers from one SAS squadron were conducting counter-terrorism training in Black Hawk helicopters with the 5th Aviation Regiment near Townsville, North Queensland. The helicopters were flying fast and low above the ground during the night exercise when the two lead Black Hawks collided and crashed. 15 SAS soldiers and 3 Army aircrew were killed. The tragedy led to significant changes in the Army's training protocols and the creation of the SAS Resources Fund. The SAS members killed in the crash were Captain Timothy Stevens, Sergeant Hugh Ellis, Corporals Miran Avedissian, Michael Bird, Andrew Constantinidis, Darren Smith and Brett Toombs, Lance Corporals Gordon Callow, David Frost, Glenn Hagan, David Johnston and Darren Oldham, Troopers Timothy McDonald and Jonathan Church, and Signaller Hendrik Peters. The members of 5th Aviation Regiment killed were Captains John Berrigan and Kelvin Hales and Corporal Michael Baker. These men lost their lives in the service of their country. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast to this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in the singing of the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Frederick John Cocking. Frederick Cocking was born in January 1886 to Thomas and Mary Ann Cocking of Tothill, Lancashire in England. He was educated at the Ryde House School at Ripley in Surrey. His parents both died around the turn of the century. By the time he was 15 years old, he was living in Blagdon, Somerset, boarding with his sister Christine, who was employed as a lady's companion. At this time, Frederick was undertaking an apprenticeship with a drain and sewerage contractor, and he would go on to work as a builder. Frederick Cocking left England in 1911 with his eldest brother William, arriving in Melbourne on the 15th of September and took up work as a bricklayer. Frederick Cocking enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in March 1915. He underwent a period of training in Australia before being sent to Egypt, but he was returned to Australia in October 1915 suffering from venereal disease. This he was treated for and was deemed well enough to return to active service in March 1916. He left Melbourne on the 7th of March 1916 on board the troop ship Wiltshire. Cocking was again sent to Egypt, where he was posted to the 5th Pioneer Battalion. On the 25th of June 1916, he was sent on to Marseille in order to participate in the fighting on the Western Front. Shortly after its arrival, the 5th Pioneer Battalion entered the front line near the French village of Fromelles. On the 19th of July 1916, infantry battalions of the 5th Division took part in a disastrous operation against German positions, suffering the largest number of casualties by a single Australian division in a 24-hour period. The 5th Pioneer Battalion remained close to the action, but not part of it. Instead, they entered the battlefield once the operation was over, conducting salvage work, repairing trenches and burying the dead. After spending some time in the north recovering its strength, the 5th Australian Division returned to the Somme later in the year. By late 1916, the 5th Pioneer Battalion was in the front line near the French village of Longueval. Winter had set in, and constant rain made the trenches a muddy morass. The pioneers, charged with construction and maintenance of the trenches and roads amongst other duties, became demoralised as everything they did was hampered or even destroyed by the sucking mud. The battalion's war diary records that the men feel they are working to no purpose and get very exhausted. On the 26th of November, Private Frederick Cocking was with his company digging a sap from the front line of trenches to the second line. A man nearby, Driver Punch, later described how there was a hiss and a roar, and a shell had caught 3 of our brave mates, which killed them instantly. Private Frederick Cocking was one of the men killed, together with Privates Jack Thompson and Tom Nugent. A 4th man was wounded in the blast. Their bodies were removed from the battlefield and buried nearby. Today, the 3 men lie side by side in the AIF burial ground at Grass Lane, Fleur. Frederick Cocking's grave bears the simple epitaph, "He gave his life for the homeland." He was 30 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Frederick John Cocking, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.